So I'll just begin with that, and then we will get into the conversation, and I'll show some slides, and maybe we'll watch a video as well. Okay. Nagyanita Miranda Siya Gyananjana Shilakaya Chekshu Militam Yunatasmai Shri Guruvena Mahashri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatapa the Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virgina Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishikambitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatvate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchikapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyeva Chaptitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasavi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so thank you for joining the call today. I have some slides I want to show you, and we want to discuss this concept of igniting our flame, and really looking at this concept in light of the fact that we're in a new year, and we want to make the best of our time. We want to make the best of our time, not just in terms of where we are in the year, but in terms of our journey throughout our lives, and especially our spiritual journey. Based upon the numbers, I think we're gonna do this in a bit of an interactive way. I just want to check with the organizers. No one needs to do this now, but if I want to get people drawn into the conversation, is everyone able to unmute themselves if I need to ask them to? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So we're gonna get into it. And I gave a seminar recently, which was on the topic of the future by design. So some of the material will be related to that. So if you were on that seminar, you may see some things that you heard before, but there'll also be some new things that we may not have thought about. And again, by the mercy of the Guru Parampara, we hope to take the conversation in whichever direction is most relevant for you. Okay, now for this to work, there's one thing I need from all of you, and that is I will need your participation, because actually what happens is you decide how the presentation goes. I'll explain how this works. This is a bit subtle, but Prabhupada talks about this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He talks about the qualification of the speaker and the qualification of the hearer. One very good friend of mine, one really wonderful devotee, we were speaking recently, and he's very much into Gaur Govinda Swami. And he was telling me about one pastime of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, where Maharaj came to give a class, and actually he couldn't speak. And he concluded that the reason why he couldn't speak is because no one in the class really wanted to know about Krishna. So therefore, because the desire wasn't there in the audience, he was actually being restrained by the Lord in the heart, so that there was no connection. So we will be able to share collectively based upon consciousness, and we're going to try and make this interactive. You may want to make notes. We tend to share a lot of information, and we want you to have some real stimulus for your own life. Now, I'm going to begin in this way. I'm going to show you something. Let's go to the first slide, actually. So this question, let's begin as we mean to go on. I would like you to share in the chat window 1 or 2 words that relate to how 2020 felt to you. Put in the chat window, send to all participants, over to you. Okay, draining, interesting, altering, thank you very much. Healing, that's a very interesting. Bad, Jessica, I love that word growth. We'll definitely come back to that. Komo, that's an interesting word, Komo. Roller coaster. Kishan, definitely different. Thank you. It's good to see you, by the way. Rajiv, introspective. And then Madhava, exhausting. Okay. Very, very interesting. And this is important because these one word answers and some sentences as well, they immediately tap into something very significant for us. I gave a class a few years ago, and I explained that the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the soundtrack of spiritual existence. And the analogy that we gave is just like, you know, when there's a major movie that comes out, usually the movie comes out, but they also release certain songs, right? There's a soundtrack to the movie, or some major star has written some music that actually promotes that particular movie. And it's interesting because music also relates to mood. How many of you, and we'll do this by a show of hands, how many of you in your past have had some kind of experience, good or bad, and when you hear a particular song, it brings you back to that particular time, or even a particular kirtan melody? If you've ever had that, use your emoticon just to indicate that you've had that experience before. Just want to see how many people can relate to what I'm saying. Okay, absolutely. I think many of us have seen that. The music relates to the mood. And the mood actually has a huge impact on how we experience anything. I was doing some research on Vedanta psychology. We've all heard in our scriptures, Prabhupada says the mind has 3 different aspects: thinking, feeling, and willing. Now, what's also interesting is our teachings explain that of the 3 aspects, thinking, feeling, and willing, the feeling aspect, the emotion, is the most significant. So when I asked you how did 2020 feel, just by the words you've used about how it feels, it says so much about what happened or what was perceived and experienced in that particular year. And this is really important because depending on how the year felt, depending on how we navigated that year, that determines that determines what happened, and it determines the foundation, what we learn and what we take on board. For many people, 2020 felt like this. So you can see so many of the words here. Let's draw your attention to 1 or 2 points. Let's start with this one. You can see here it says loneliness. And I'm going to throw this out. Why would, at least for some people, why would 2020 have felt lonely? I just want to hear from 1 or 2 of you. Let's make this interactive, and I'll just tee this up. We remember about 70% of what we discuss, 80% of what we experience, and 90 to 95% of what we share. One of the things I'm constantly thinking about is how we can become transformed. It's boring to stay the same. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's boring to hear classes if you feel, oh, I've heard that before, that sounds like that before. But if we can start to connect with the material and engage, it will go much more deeply into our consciousness. And then what we'll start to find in life is that every single class changes us. And it's really powerful, by the way. If every single class you go to changes you and transforms you, you find that you're becoming better, stronger, sharper, more resilient on every single class, seminar. And the way this is achieved is by engagement with the material. So let's make it real, because I don't know about you, but you know that life becomes intense when the whole world is locked down for most of the year. And you know that life is intense when many people, they're not sure what's going to happen in the future. And you know that life is intense, and I can't speak for other places. In London, When I go out my door and I see people, I can feel the anxiety. I can feel the uncertainty. I can see on people's faces, they've been hit for six, right? They've been hit with a situation that's like no one expected it, and they're still working out how to deal with it. And there's lots of unknowns. People don't know what's happening right now. They don't know how long things are going to last. They don't know if they're going to go back to quote unquote normal. Okay? So we want to explore all of these because there's a great opportunity for spiritually attuned people to make incredible strides in life. If we get the mindset right to literally learn from everything. Okay? So we wanted to discuss, so this thing that I want to discuss for you is, let's start with this point about loneliness. Why would, for some people, 2020 be considered a lonely experience? I'd like someone to just give me an answer. You can use your emoticon if you'd like to speak, and we'd like to hear from you. Let's make this interactive. And I'm sure that there may be other people on this call also who've lost loved ones, friends and family. And to your point, absolutely, this is one of the real, it's one of the real sadnesses of the situation that we're all in as a world society, you know. And I think this is a time, perhaps more than any other time in the world, where we really need to be there to support and show empathy and show love and consideration for what so many people are going through at this time, you know. So first of all, Bina, and you've given a very striking example of why so much loneliness can be experienced or was experienced in 2020. Okay, thank you for being on this call as well, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share something? Why, in their experience or their understanding, why 2020, any other reasons why 2020 may be considered a lonely year for some? If you have something, use your emoticon to raise your hand so I can see you, and then I can bring you into the conversation. Would anyone else like to share? There are many people who are going through a great sense of loneliness. And to be honest, it's interesting. So one of the things that came out last year was that there are many people who also live alone. And because they live alone, when they're self-isolating, that time with other people that they would get in the office, at university, at college, at school, suddenly it's no longer there. And what's also striking about that is that it's even more profound if, for example, someone is more extroverted, because they get their energy from that interaction. So definitely loneliness can be there for a number of reasons. We want to explore one more area. So let's just go back to the slides. And we want to look at this. So let's do this. So we talked about loneliness, but let's go to this one about uncertainty. Why would there be such a strong sense of uncertainty? And we know that's generally there, but what if people particularly uncertain about? Let's go to Jessica. What are your thoughts on this? Absolutely. And you really hit upon a key point. So I'm just going to share something on this. So before I became a devotee, I was involved in various kinds of more subtle sciences. And one of the things that I used to do was to try to understand the energy of a particular year. So every single year carries a certain energy. Every single year is in itself a certain karmic period. And that year has a particular energy, a particular flavor. In fact, not just the year, every decade has that, right? For some of you, back in the day, like the 80s had a certain flavor, a certain energy to it. The 90s had a certain energy to it, right? The 2000s had a certain energy. So one of the things that I was reflecting on was that in 2020, it had a certain kind of energy. 2020 had the energy which related to foundations. It had the energy which related to really going back to basics, to be honest. And the reason why I'm sharing this, Jessica, is because it relates to what you were saying, that the ground that people stand on. So one of the karmic lessons from 2020 was to really tune into what are your foundations, what are the quality of those foundations, and if we grasp those lessons it was an opportunity to build deeper, stronger, and more stable foundations. Now we know, as devotees, the real stability is spiritual. We know that the material energy, by definition, is an unstable energy. Things go back and forth, things deteriorate. The unexpected is the expected in many ways. And unfortunately, let's be very honest, it's not really clear how long the situation is going to complete. In fact, what they're speaking about is how we're eventually as a society just going to have to learn to live with the virus. But the idea being that there'll be so many people vaccinated that even though it's in the environment, it doesn't affect people in the same way. So this, let's be honest, this 2020, it really surprised everyone. It really surprised everyone. And we're not through the situation yet, okay? One of the things we hope to do in this session is to really draw upon what we can be doing to build those deeper understanding and to situate ourselves in a deeper way. And it can be done, by the way. These things can be done. In fact, if anyone is well placed to be on stronger foundations while they are in this world, it is people who have a spiritual dimension to their lives. If you were to do a study comparing those who live just in a kind of very material way and those who have a spiritual dimension means a number of things. One is a vision, a philosophy that decodes the instability, right? That allows you to see that properly. Two is a spiritual practice that does what? A spiritual practice that helps you to become used to making a particular journey. We all make journeys in life. We may go to school, we may go to work, we may go to visit friends, we may go to the restaurant, social situations, but there is one additional journey that all spiritual people go through. Every single genuinely spiritual person is used to taking the journey within. Through mantra, through prayer, through reflection, all of these things are they're actually tools for making a regular journey within oneself. And when we do this, you start to have two existences. You're able to maneuver the outside world, the outside existence, but you also become increasingly comfortable maneuvering the inner world. So when people become very accustomed and attuned to the inner world, the inner journey, it gives you a whole new realm of exploration that literally the majority of the world don't have access to or are not accustomed. They have access, but they're not accustomed to making that journey. It's something to think about. I'm going to bring my slides back up and we're going to move on because there's a lot to explore and I also want to give time for questions. So I'll move a little bit more quickly. So there are many unknowns, a lot of uncertainty, and yet we still need to move forward in life. So the question is simply this: where is it going to go in the future? Now we have these aspirations. We have things that we want to achieve. We have ideals. We want to go forward. And yet at the same time, we're not clear what's happening, where we're going. So the question is very simply, what can we do about this and how can we move forward? I want to show you something which can give us a clue about how we can navigate not just the year that we've been through, but it's a clue that will allow us to navigate our entire life successfully, okay? And I think some of you may have seen this in in my Future by Design video. So if you have seen this, then just hold tight. But for others, this will be new. I'm going to play you a video, and you'll see everything in the video. I just want you to tune into what you're seeing. Then we will have some discussion after the video. So let's go.
This is the Shogun. I'm going to hide this Hershey's Kiss under this cup, and the object is for you to pay attention and follow along and try to guess which cup the Hershey's Kiss is under at the end. Try to guess if it's in the left cup, the middle cup, or the right cup. Let's check the left cup. Middle cup. If you guess the middle cup, you got it right. So now we're going to make it a little more complicated. I've added an extra pair of hands, and I've added additional colors here. But that's only to distract you from the pink cups. The pink cups will always have, one of the pink cups will always have the Hershey Kiss underneath. So let's get started. So can you guess where the Hershey Kiss is? Right again. You're so good at this. Okay.
Okay. So I just want to talk about what you saw. And this is actually an interesting experiment. The reason why I showed this to you was to really tune in to the power of your focus. A whole range of things were going on, but your attention was drawn in a specific direction. And this is actually how life works. There's an interesting pastime in the Mahabharata. So the Pandavas, they're incognito, they're pretending, they're hiding, they're in hiding, and they're actually dressed as brahmanas. But they're in the palace of a king. And what's happening is the king's watching them. And he notices that these people, they're dressed as Brahmins, but when they're in the palace, their attention is immediately drawn to the weapons. And they're looking at the weapons and they're admiring the weapons. And the kings are thinking, these guys are dressed as Brahmanas. Why are they so interested in the weapons? And he realizes the fact that they're drawn to these weapons indicates that they're not Brahmanas. If it was Brahmanas, they may be drawn to the books, okay? They want to be into the information. These guys are looking at all the weaponry. This indicates something about every single person and our consciousness. What happens for each and every one of us, we have selective attention. There's what's happening in life, and then there's what we are tuning into in any situation, because there's so much information in the environment, you can't actually be attentive to everything. Now, what happens for most people is they tune into things unconsciously. But much of the power of an individual is to consciously choose where you give your attention. Because actually, that's what defines your year. It's what defines your life. It is also what defines our consciousness. And this is really important. I was preparing some material for Instagram. And one of the messages I was going to share on Instagram was that, you see, we have this phrase, right? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And there's a saying that you should deploy them in that proportion, right? So that twice as much hearing as speaking. But there's a hidden secret about the way that we have been created and the way that we work. And that is that what a person speaks about is actually a result of their hearing. It's a very, very powerful point. What you hear, it then becomes internalized as a thought process. And then, because you start to think about it, that's actually what comes out. There's this statement that Prabhupada says, a fool remains hidden until they speak. What Prabhupada is actually saying is you can understand something about a person's consciousness by their speech. It's actually a science. Even in the secular world, they actually know this. I do leadership training for a living. My manager, he knew this, and he alluded it to a bit before, but there's studies on this. You can tell also how confident someone is by the way that they speak, you know? You can tell how confident they are. You can tell whether their confidence is real confidence, that means it's actually based upon knowledge, or if they're confident above their actual qualification. You can tell, because you can see the disparity between their conviction about something and their knowledge. You see, when the conviction and knowledge are equal, it means they have authentic confidence. Their confidence is based upon knowledge. When they're confident, but their conviction is above their actual understanding, which means that they can't properly explain something, even though they assert it, then you know you're dealing with people who are actually, they're overconfident. There's all of these sciences are there. It's a hidden psychology of sound, which is in the scripture. Anyway, that's a whole other seminar. We're not going to get into that now. But the point is, a fool remains hidden until they speak, because in the Shastra, your speech and your intelligence are connected. You see? So if you know these subtle sciences, you just need to listen to someone, you can immediately understand what's going on. Immediately. Because of the quality of speech is actually signifying the quality of the intelligence. Anyway, these are some subtle things. But the reason why I'm saying this is because if we think about this, we have a chain. What we hear affects what we think. What we think affects what we speak. That means that we have control. That means that my thought pattern, which affects my speech pattern, it all begins with the quality of what I take in. Now, it's not even just the hearing, it's actually the quality of what we take in generally. All of these things actually run through our entire system, and there's a feedback loop, because what I speak is also what I'm hearing. So I can empower myself by the quality of what I take into my life, or I can degrade myself by the quality of what I allow to come into me. What is it that Krishna says? What is it that the Shastra says? Upadeshamrita, vacho vegam manasakroda vegam. Right? It's explained the control of the tongue, the belly, the genitals, all of these things, especially the tongue, because it's an input. It's what I'm putting in, which is also affecting everything else in my system. All of these things are making a powerful difference. So if we want to live a life where we can do really well, there's two things that we need to do. We need to be mindful of the quality of what we bring into our consciousness, and we need to choose positive choices consistently. Okay, let me repeat that, because if you remember nothing else, don't underestimate the power and the simplicity of this. Our thought pattern is coming from the things that we've had input into our consciousness, what we've heard, what we've read, what we've said, what we've discussed with people, what we've seen on TV, on the internet. There's a huge crisis in terms of mental health, and they don't know. Can you believe this? Because they don't have Shastra, you get this confused vision. That's what the mode of ignorance does. All of these different things, and no one knows what's causing it. They don't know that if you were just to change consistently the quality of what you bring into your consciousness, your whole life will change. Think about that. If you were to change consistently, not once off, this is the other thing. People do it as a one-off. It doesn't work the same way. If any, and you can do this experiment, by the way. I've been experimenting. I'll tell you honestly, I can't even lie. We don't even give people stuff that we don't test drive ourselves. If you did this for 1 week, you chose consciously the things that you bring in, that you, not just randomly surfing on the internet, not just randomly surfing on your social media, not just randomly having conversations with people. If for 1 week, and it's just a week, if you did it for a month, it's phenomenal. If for 1 week you did that, and you did a diary before and the diary after, you would directly feel that your mentality is different. I'll tell you the truth. I was having a conversation this morning with one devotee. It was a great conversation. So what was being discussed, that particular devotee, there was certain association that they used to be around. Okay, association has two types. There was certain association, and that had some positive inputs, but there was certain association that had negative inputs. And to be honest, this particular devotee, they're flying. They're flying. I guarantee you. I would go so far as to say, anyway, they're going to do really well. Let's put it that way. They're flying. But how? What they did, and this is what I'm encouraging you to do for this year and for your life. They did two things. They reduced negative association. I've noticed that those who come to Krishna consciousness, you're powerful people, you're special people. What happens because of your previous life, and Krishna explains to Arjuna the fate of the unsuccessful yogi in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Because of your previous life, you have some sukriti, which is why you're either born in Krishna consciousness or have chosen Krishna consciousness. But Maya is very strong. So she has two tactics. First of all, keep people anchored to more materialistic patterns, materialistic ideas, materialistic association. So what that does is it holds you back. Okay? So even if you have good association, you can have good association and that can be cancelled out by material association. So it's like a car. The car's trying to drive, but it's being pulled back. It's sometimes going in reverse, sometimes going forward, sometimes going reverse, sometimes going forward. And after a while, the car's like, I don't quite understand why we're not getting anywhere. So there's two dimensions. Dimension one, up the anchors. So we can consider what elements in my life are holding me back from being my best self. Point one. And the second point, what are the opportunities in my life that can propel me forward? Because you can even have people in your environment who can propel you forward, but if you do not take advantage of it, then you don't get the benefit. They are there, you can connect with them, You can associate with them, but unless you go forward and say yes and make it real, you don't move forward. I was doing some study in the Shastra about mercy, because we constantly hear about Krishna giving mercy, devotees giving mercy, and how that works. So I was doing some research. Mercy is any form of Krishna consciousness that can allow you to make progress, okay? The holy name is mercy. The association of devotees is mercy. The Shastra is mercy. Even the Shastra can burn off your karma, right? Seriously, that if anyone wants to know where that comes from, there was a Pandavasena presentation. It was an interview with Shivram Swami, and it was about, I think it was called Follow Your Dharma. It's online on YouTube, you can listen to it. He makes the point that even Shastra can take karma. So just think about that for a moment. We talk about mercy, we talk about wanting to progress, and the devotees who read the books regularly, they're burning off their karma just by the reading process. So you can have two devotees, and it looks like they've both been around for the same amount of time, but one of them's burning off all kinds of karma. The other person doesn't even know that they can do it. So all the different forms of Krishna consciousness, they can actually burn off karma. The holy name, association, but you have to actually take that mercy. The book is there, but you have to read it, then you burn off karma. The classes is there, but you have to attend the class, then you burn off karma. The association is there, but you have to take the association, then you burn off karma. And more than burning off karma, that's secondary. Primary is you grow in your devotion. So what we have in our international communities, to be honest with you, unfortunately, because we are neophytes, we have all kinds of mercy available and people don't take any advantage, and then they wonder why they're struggling. That's the honest truth. And don't take what I said. Check out the class. I think it's called Unlock Your Dharma or Follow Your Dharma. If you pull into YouTube, Pandavasena, Shivram Swami, Dharma, it's an interview, and he's being interviewed by a person named Nandagopa. You can actually watch it for yourself. See, this is what I mean. Also, mercy comes in the form of knowledge. You see, I have a mentee group, and what happened was one of them sent a quote, and I was reflecting. Since I saw it, I thought, wow, that's amazing. I'm going to talk about that. There was a quote by Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, maybe someone can find it in my mentee group if they're on here. But the quote by Prabhupada, he's basically saying about, I think he's talking about pure devotees. He said, you have to either be very fortunate or very learned to understand that quality. So if you look at it superficially, you think, oh, that's a nice statement. But if you look at it more deeply, you can understand something very powerful. Mercy is also manifest in the form of knowledge, right? Sometimes what Krishna will do is he'll just arrange for things to fall into your lap in life. Other times what Krishna will do is he'll give you guidance and instruction. But then if you take it on board and use it, then you've just claimed some spiritual mercy, because there's an equivalence. There's an equivalence between good direction and good fortune. They are both forms, and the Sanskrit and the technical term, just in case you're interested, they're both forms of Kripa Shakti or Karuna Shakti, which is Krishna's mercy potency. And that mercy potency comes through many different avenues in life. One avenue is a devotee, one avenue is a scripture, one avenue is the holy name, one avenue is the holy dham, one avenue is the deities, but you have to take the mercy, you see? And what happens and why sometimes devotees struggle, there's huge amounts available, no one claims it. No one claims it, right? But the ones who do take it, who claim it on a regular basis, their spiritual life goes off the scale. Even the holy name, again, this is not a seminar about the holy name, but you should know that Hare Krishna mantra, when you chant it, is ecstatic. Anyone who chants that holy name, who doesn't have material coverings, they experience the true nature of the holy name. It's that when you chant it, it is immediately blissful. But why doesn't it become blissful for us? It's because we've got these coverings. So when we chant it, it's like, oh, Hare Krishna, oh, like that. So what it's doing is it's cleaning away the blocks. So one day when there's less blockages, when you chant it, you can immediately, wow, this is actually really blissful. And it's immediately blissful. The holy name being non-different from Krishna, it has its own intense blissful nature. And it's always like that. But we don't experience it because we're covered. And what uncovers each and every one of us is regular taking or accepting the mercy. It's always there, but you have to say yes to it. You have to say yes to it. There's a story about some guy, he was stranded and he was praying for God to come and save him. And then what happened was some guy came on the speedboat and he said, no, and the guy said, look, I can help you. He said, no, don't worry. I'm praying to God, he's going to come and save me. Then later on, someone came by in a helicopter and put the ladder down and he didn't take the ladder. He said, no, it's okay. I'm praying to God, he's going to come and save me. So many opportunities came, he didn't take them. And he died. And when he died, he came before God and he said, God, why didn't you help me? I was praying for you to save me. God said, I sent you the speedboat. I sent you the helicopter. I sent you all those things. You just didn't take any of them. Why didn't you say yes to the mercy that I sent? You asked me to help you. I said yes. I brought all the opportunities before you and you said no. You refused all the help. We're like that person. And I'll be honest, because we're family. It's not just a few of us. Most of our community in ISKCON is like that. Because we don't really have knowledge. Therefore, when we hear mercy, we don't know what it means. We've no idea what it means. We've no idea that if I read, it will burn off my karma. It will actually change my entire life. It will change my karma. It's like, yeah. We don't know what it means. So we're constantly being offered opportunities and we constantly turn them down. We constantly turn them down. And what's worse, when we turn them down, then we think, you know what, this Christian conscience is so difficult. Oh, it's so hard. I mean, I'm trying so hard. It's like, oh, nothing happens. It's like, well, dude, do you actually do any of the things which are offered to you? When Radha Maharaj was giving a class, did you go to the class? No, I was doing my nails. I was busy. Okay, so you turned down the mercy. Okay, so that Bhagavatam set that they gave you, for some special festival, it's gathering dust. Do you read any of the books? No, I don't read the books. No. That's the point. That's what it means. We don't take any advantage of what we've been given. And then let's be wrong. This is why many of us, when the situation comes, it's challenging. There's a very hidden principle. It's an esoteric principle in our Bhakti Yoga tradition. Krishna loves you so much, he will, if you're even a little bit sincere, he will always give you a heads up before something happens. Always. Now, when I say heads up, it will be in different forms. Let's make it real. I'll tell you what happened to me. So 2004, for years, I was doing like just part-time or temporary jobs because I wanted to spend more time in the temple doing preaching, and it was blissful. It was absolutely incredible. 2004, my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he had planned his world tour. As part of the world tour, he was coming to London. Before he was coming to London, there was a Pandavasena trip. A Pandavasena trip with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Jadwaita Maharaj, and Radha Maharaj, and they were in New Vrindavan, and that was one part of the trip. And the other part of the trip, they were going to New York. So I was thinking, I haven't got any money, being very honest. And I thought, you know what? My Guru Maharaj is coming to London, so I'm not going to bother going to the Pandavasena trip. I'll see him when he comes. There's a seminar, and this seminar, I'll tell you honestly, it changed my life. This seminar changed my life. It was called The Higher Connection by Satchidananda Maharaj. You can find this on his website. And the seminar is about how to contact the super soul, right? And I wrote to Satchidananda Maharaj after hearing that seminar, and I spoke to my Guru Maharaj about it. So what happened was I listened to that seminar. Either it was late 2003 or 2004. And one of the things that really stuck in my mind from the seminar, again, mercy. The classes give mercy, but you have to take it. You have to actually see it for what it is and say yes. So in that seminar, one of the things he said is that if you think Krishna is trying to tell you something and you're not sure, he said, don't act on it. He said, if the message is coming from Krishna and you're sincere, he sends you the message again and again and again. So I called Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I remember when it was, I called him, I was in the Govinda's restaurant in 2004, because in that year, people kept saying to me, Bhuta Bhavana, you know, you should spend some time serving your spiritual master, right? So I called him up and I said, Guru Maharaj, for some reason, different devotees keep coming to me, all independently, right? Different people randomly, and they keep saying to me, Bhuta Bhavana, you know what? You should spend some time serving your spiritual master. So I called him up and I said, so I don't know, I think maybe Krishna wants me to come and spend some time serving you. And he said to me, he said, yes. He said, if you can get the time off, come and serve me. So what I did, I went to the Pandav Center trip, but I stayed on. I'd arranged things, I wasn't working. I went to the Pandav Center trip, but after the trip, I carried on spending time with my Guru Maharaj. So after the trip, I was with him in Detroit, I was with him in Gitanagari, all of these things. And then August that year, he was diagnosed with cancer. So Krishna, what he had done, he said, look, I'm about to take your spiritual master from the planet. You go and serve him now, because if you don't serve him now, you're going to regret it. You're not going to see him later on. And I in my room upstairs, I have diaries from my time serving him, things he said, services I was doing, different pastimes, interactions. So that was in 2004. Then because I had, you know, the visa, you have a certain tourist visa, you can stay in America for a certain period. So then I went back to London. Then I also went back to spend more time with him. After he was diagnosed 2004. Then after spending quite some time, had to go back to London. And I came again. I was with him in 2005 before he passed away. When I came in 2005, because I had a cold, and when people have cancer, their immune system is weak. So you can't be close to them, because if you know, your cold can actually be the death of that person. So I didn't get that same direct one-on-one constant time, but Krishna had given me an opportunity through the devotees. I remember even Jayadev, many of you know Jayadev, he's a very famous kirtaneer. He told me, you know what, you should spend some time serving your spiritual master. So the mercy is there. Krishna really cares about us, but what I want you to understand is you have to be alert in Krishna consciousness. He is going to look after you, but you have to pay attention. What does Prabhupada say? Why we must become conscious before we can become Krishna conscious. If you're not conscious, even though he's trying to help you, you won't see it. You'll miss it. I can give you one other. I remember my parents weren't favorable to Krishna consciousness. I'd come home from the temple in the evening. I remember one evening I thought, why is it that my parents aren't favorable? I was reading Bhagavatam. First canto is chapter 7. And I was thinking about that. So I asked that question. I remember coming home, I walked up the stairs to my room and I opened the Bhagavatam and I was thinking that in the purple, Prabhupada is talking about how sometimes Krishna makes the family inimical, so the person will become a bit more detached. It's there in the purple. It's like, you wanted to know? Here's your answer. You can't imagine how much Krishna really likes you. You can't imagine it. So what will happen is he'll give you a heads up. But you have to be sincere and humble. Two things. If you're not sincere and humble, the false ego will block the message, right? And I'll be honest, you sometimes see this in our movement. You see devotees in our movement who, rather than wanting to understand the truth, they have an attachment. So what happens is, I want to believe this. That's false ego, that's lack of humility. So it's like, I want to believe this, and I'm not prepared to have anyone tell me otherwise, okay? Then what you're doing is you're saying that you want to hold on to your own idea rather than hearing what Krishna has to say. And because of that false ego, Krishna may tell them something, but they're not ready to hear the truth. They want to hear something that reinforces their own illusions or their own attachments, right? And we know this. We all have experience. Sometimes let's say, I'm going to give an example. Hopefully this doesn't play out. Sometimes you know someone and the people that they hang out with, they're not good for them. And it's obviously not good for them. And you tell them, you know what, I don't think these people are good for you. But because they're attached, they don't want to hear it. It's objectively the truth. Like, no, you just don't understand. You're like you're trying to be pure devotee syndrome. it's like, dude, what can you say to that person? What can you say to that person? I'm trying to tell you the truth, but you just don't want to hear it. So, okay. But then what Krishna does then is he goes from the what is it called? The sweet mercy to the bitter mercy. It's still mercy, but because you couldn't hear, now that relationship or that friendship, the person who told you early, I don't think that's a good relationship. I don't think that's a good friendship. I think these people are holding you back, but you can't hear it. So now you're going to have to see that they are actually holding you back. You're going to have to go through bad experiences with those people. You were told a year ago, but you didn't accept it. So now it's going to become, a year ago when you were told, it was subtle. It was on the ether. You were just told, but you didn't take it seriously. So now it's going to become more gross. Now you're actually going to have an issue with those people. You're going to have a falling out with those people. You're going to get cheated by those people. And then you're going to think, they were right. Someone told me that a year ago, but we didn't listen, you know? And to be honest with you, this is what's happening to the world right now. I hate to break it, but I'm just, again, we're family, so I'm going to tell you the truth. There's some research I did about the karma of the world. This period we're in, this is payback time, right? The way that we as a human society have mistreated the earth, have mistreated other people, all of these things, this is like, okay, you've taken from Mother Earth, now you're gonna have to pay for it, you know? So there's some karmic payback on the global level where karma is now coming, the payback is coming. Now, we don't have to play into that karma, by the way, as devotees, okay? We don't have to play into that karma, but it is a karmic payback that's happening in the world right now, because Krishna only allows something to happen like that for so long. And because he's compassionate, this is a pattern, by the way, and if you look carefully, you'll see this in your own life. Krishna's very compassionate. Even though we make mistakes, he doesn't hold us immediately responsible for reaction. Oftentimes, he'll be like, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea. I know you think it's okay, but I'm going to keep knocking on your door, suggesting it's a bad idea. And it's only if you refuse to listen again and again and again that it becomes more intense. What is pain? I was listening to a class by my spiritual master yesterday on intuition and prayer. And there was a message for me. There was something I'd been thinking about, and in the class, it came up again. And I thought, wow, okay, confirmation. What was being said is that, and this is true, pain is one of the ways in which Krishna uses to show us you're going in the wrong direction, right? So sometimes if we don't catch it, it will become more painful. Then it's like, okay, I didn't listen for it. It's so painful that you're forced to be like, okay, I get your point. I'm going to do things differently, you know? So anyway, those are a few things. I guess there's one more thing I'll share with you, then we'll open for questions. So I'm going to move to a particular slide, and then I'd like to see what questions that you have. So let's go to this one. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen with you to give you something interesting and useful that you can do. And you can get into this more in your own time, or I can share with you more about this as well if you wish. But there's a very interesting concept that can help us to be more successful this year than, to be honest, than you've ever been in your entire life. This term, and I spoke about this in a previous session with some other people, this is called systems theory. This term, which is very, very strong and very used in some organizations, companies, and so on, this term, or rather the concept, actually comes from Shastra. Let me explain what I mean by this. See, many times people talk about goal setting. They talk about making 2021 a better experience. They will set goals, they'll set targets, they'll try and do certain things, and they fail. Now, the question is why? Why do we fail? We want to do something, we want to be successful, but oftentimes we don't get there. Why? This is one of them. If you take this and you understand this and you apply it, I guarantee you 2021 will be one of the best years of your life, and it will just carry on. So systems theory, I'll give you an example from Shastra, or rather an example from devotional life, and then we'll go into it as a principle. So how many of you have ever come to an ISKCON temple for Mangalati? If you have, raise your hands, use your electronic hand sign. How many of you have ever been to Mangalati morning program in the temple? Okay, I can see quite a few hands up. Okay, how many of you have found that, how many of you have stayed for the japa period? Right, so you actually chant with the devotees in the temple, right? Okay, now, how many of you have found that when you're with the devotees in the temple and you're chanting, it's much easier than when you're having to chant by yourself at home? Anyone ever found that? Okay. Now let's look at why. Okay. What you've clued into is called, in the secular world, is called systems theory. There's research. The research has shown that when you try to do something, you have two elements. You have, on the one hand, willpower. Okay, you're trying to use your own strength, your own determination to move in a certain direction. On the other side of the equation, you have the environment. The reason why people don't achieve what they can and don't hit their goals and their targets is because in many cases, they've set up their life that there's a conflict between the two. So my willpower wants me to move in one direction, but my environment, and environment is the physical environment. The environment can also be the people that you spend time with. The environment can be the schedule that you have. It can be so many things. But what happens in 99.9% of the cases is that we have set up a conflict between our will, our willpower, the direction that we want to go in, and the environment that we're operating in. And the research shows that unless you're one of the rare people, very rare people, in 99.9% of the cases, when you want to go in one direction and the environment is moving in another direction, the environment is going to overpower your willpower. Does that make sense? Can anyone relate to that? Just raise your hand if you've ever had that kind of experience. You wanted to go in one direction, but the environment was pushing you in another direction. Absolutely. So back to the analogy of Mangalati. So you're in the temple, everyone's chanting. So even though when you're at home, you sometimes feel the desire to check your mobile phone while you're chanting the rounds. Even though when you're in the environment, when you're chanting with other devotees, you find that you may feel like doing something like stopping for your rounds for a bit, but because the environment is heavily leaning in a certain direction, something very powerful happens. Something very powerful happens. You're able to achieve more with less willpower. Think about that. It's a serious point I'm making to you. It's simple, but extremely serious. So systems theory, it's all about one thing. It's about setting up your environment to support you in the direction in life that you want to consciously go in. Okay? And the idea behind this is very simple. You first of all figure out, where do I want to go? That's part one. Second, you figure out, what do I need to do? How do I need to shape my environment to support me in that direction? Okay? And then what happens is you start to act on it. So what happens is I've got my goal, then I've got my environment that leans or pushes me in the direction that I want to go in. And then I've got the consistent interaction. What do I mean by consistent interaction? I continually put myself in the environment that supports me in the goal that I want to go in. Now, if you do step 1 and step 2 consistently, what happens in step 3 is the environment goes into you. Okay? In other words, this is how you generate powerful, lasting habits. And your habits are the autopilot of your success in life. I repeat that. Your habits, and I'm going to put it as an Instagram handle, I'm going to put it as an Instagram quote at some point, so don't steal it. Your habits are the autopilot of your success. If you want to, and don't take this lightly, if you want to be successful in life, what you want to do is outsource as many powerful habits as you can. Okay? You want to put those positive things on autopilot. And again, the steps are very simple. Number one, where do I want to go? What's my goal? Or goals, plural. Step two, how do I set up the environment that supports, and let's make it real. Let's give you an example. Let's say that you find you get distracted in your chanting. Okay? Your chanting isn't very good. And you want to be better, right? Who doesn't? I've never found a devotee in ISKCON who does not want to improve their chanting. But they're not conscious. We're not conscious. Prabhupada said that. You have to become conscious before you can become Krishna conscious. So what's Prabhupada doing? Now in our lives, what's Prabhupada doing? He's giving us mercy in the form of knowledge. But you have to do something with the knowledge. You have to say yes to the mercy. Otherwise, you go into one class, you go into another class, you go into another class, you read something, you hear something, and you said no to the mercy because you didn't take it on board. You didn't use it. That's how you become empowered in Krishna consciousness. Mercy is always available, but we have to say yes to it. We have to hear it and pull it down to our lives, and you'll see your life will change. So, example, I want to become better at my japa. That's my goal. Second, what's the environment that I can set up to be better? Let's leave willpower aside, because willpower is a value add. What willpower is meant to do is it's meant to help you to excel. You see, there are lots of hidden teachings in our Shastra. I'll do a seminar on that in the future. I was making some reflections, but we won't go into it now. There are a lot of hidden teachings in our Shastra because there's the teachings of the scripture, but there's a subtext, okay? So, for example, the sadachar, okay, the sadachar is not always so explicitly stated. The sadachar, meaning that the behavior, the conduct, is the Vaishnava etiquette is derived from the behavior of pure devotees. So, for example, when you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, all of the pure associates of the Lord, their behavior is inspired by the love they have for Krishna. You see, their behavior, because it's inspired by prema, if you follow that behavior, you're automatically behaving in the way that Krishna likes. You see, so it's derived. It's not like, this Narottam Das Thakur spoke like this. That means that that's how Krishna likes you to speak. It's derived from that. You see, so in the same way, if you look beneath the surface, there's a whole hidden universe of meaning in all of the scriptures. All of the scriptures. My wife was sharing with me recently. There was a class that she was hearing, and the point that was made is that the verses have a direct meaning. They often have an indirect meaning, and they also have what's called a rahasyam, which is a secret meaning. So I remember reading. I remember reading this years ago. It was something I was reading by Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and he gives the terms tattva vichar, the direct meaning, apara vichar, which is like an indirect meaning as well. So there's so many more things in the Shastra, but with the eyes to see, you can see it. So anyway, we won't deviate too much. Let's say I want to become better at my japas, so that's my goal. Then the question is, what's the environment that's going to support it? So back in the day, we could say, go to the temple for Mangalati, right? You chant with the devotees, you do it regularly, it becomes second nature. So then even when you're not with them, you're used to focusing on your chanting because you put yourself in the environment that supported the development of that habit, right? Now, okay, then the question is, what do we do now, Bhuta Bhavana? We're not, the temples may be closed or etc. Zoom, right? There may be devotees who can come together on Zoom at a certain time. And it doesn't even have to be the morning, although morning is ideal. But if you can't do the morning, then some other time. And you don't depend on your own willpower anymore. You will get that. The willpower will be the value add. But you start to think, and I'll bring this back up. This is a game changer, people, by the way. It's not a small thing I'm saying to you. This one thing can change your life. You think in terms of systems rather than just goals. I know I want this, but the question is, how do I set up the environment so that what I want, that the environment pushes me in that direction? So what I was saying about the subtext in the Shastra, there's many subtexts. What do I mean by subtext? What I mean is that in the Vedic age, these things were normal. Do you see what I'm trying to say? In the Vedic age, everyone went to the temple, it was normal. Even if they weren't Vaishnavas, they go to some kind of temple. In the Vedic age, for example, everyone wakes up and sleeps at a certain time. You see my point? It's normal. It's subtext. It's a given, right? So it's not like people have an erratic sleeping pattern. There's no night shift work, you see? So therefore, these things are taken for granted. Everyone, yeah, Mangalati, everyone wakes up, right? Everyone sleeps early. In the Vedic system, it's not that you need to go to a therapist. You got extended family. It's normal. So when you're upset with your parents, you can go and speak to your aunts and your uncles, and they're going to say, yeah, I understand. You know, yeah, they're like that sometimes. Don't worry, I'll talk to them. You see, because these things are a given. But because we've moved so far away from that, now we have to put lots of other things in place to make up for things that we used to have for free. So I want to improve my japa. I create the environment, and it can be the temple. It can be, I create an environment with my friends. We make a collective agreement, but whatever you want to achieve, I want to encourage you from this point onwards in life, think in terms of systems. Don't depend on your willpower. Let your willpower be the value add. Let your willpower take your life to the next level, but let your environment guarantee you a certain level of success. Think in terms of systems. You see, it will make that one thing can change the entire course of your life. There's a statement in Niti Shastra. Chanakya says, study is done by two. Simple, isn't it? Right? You can understand this. It's so obvious when we think about it. I want to study, but I don't always feel excited about reading. So what do? I read with someone else, because now I've made an agreement. So when I don't feel excited, it doesn't matter. They're expecting me to read with them at a certain time. When I don't think I'm particularly inspired or have any fresh realization, doesn't matter. We're reading together. They're sharing their realization. So we're reading the same thing, but they keep it exciting because they share something I didn't think about. I share something they didn't think about. And you know what? If I do it regularly, after a while, I've got such a taste for the reading that even if they're not there, I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. Please, I beg you, don't be like most devotees in our communities. I'm sorry, it breaks my heart to say that, but we're family. I mean it. I really mean that. Do not become like most of the devotees in our community. Don't miss the mercy, point number one. Two, don't wait for Maya to kick you. Make conscious decisions about where you want to go in life, go. And number two, create systems that move you in that direction regularly, and then use your willpower as a value add. See, in the Vedic society, what they did was they didn't even use their willpower to create the environment, because it was already, the environment was leaning towards spirituality. Okay, but the willpower was a value add. But what I'm suggesting to all of you is use your willpower to set up the system. You see, then plug yourself into the system to build the habit. And what will happen is, if you set up the right habits, what are the habits? Quality chanting, definitely. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I mean what I said. If you just read the books regularly, it will burn away karma for you. Can you believe that? How easy can it be? If you just read, you can actually burn away your karma and strengthen your consciousness. There are many people in 2020, to be honest, who were not so affected by what happened. I've been pushing my mentees also. I'll be honest, where I'm in life at the moment, in many ways, I'm loving it. I can't lie to you. Why? Because certain things we put in place, even before 2020, they've just been going through. You should be like a business. A good business, they make money all the time, because businessmen, they don't think in terms of just a sale. They think in terms of a system. You want to know what I'm talking about? Go on Amazon, right? Amazon, when you buy something, they will show you another 4 or 5 products which you may also be interested in. And with Amazon, when you go on there, they'll also show you people who bought the thing that you're going to buy. They also bought this and this and this. In other words, they're showing you all the complementary goods that connect with it. So if you want to excel in life, you need to take a step back and think carefully about what habits are going to make me successful and get those habits on autopilot. Believe me, if you become connected nicely in spiritual life, you'll be so powerful and so realized and so insightful. You can immediately understand why people are not moving forward. Immediately. You just need to speak to them and you can, so tell me about what's going on. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it now. You're doing this, you're not doing that. This is an anchor for you. You're holding yourself back in this way. The number one thing that most devotees don't understand is if you do it properly, your spiritual life is so blissful, you don't have to try and hold back from material life. It's not, I need to stop doing this. That's not really the program. It's not really the program. If you do your spiritual life properly, you will experience a happiness which will displace your material desires. And then again, I'm not telling you to believe me. Try it and see what happens. If you do it properly. So get your habits, good habits on autopilot. A few suggestions for good habits. Chanting attentively, reading regularly, if you can every day, right? If you can, a good habit is also rising early, which usually means sleeping early and rising early. That's another good habit. Another good habit is regularly hearing classes which will inspire you. All of these activities will strengthen your consciousness, and your consciousness is your #1 insurance policy against uncertainty. It's actually by consciousness that you become future-proof. You see, there's 2 types of stability. There's external stability and there's inner stability. External stability is actually a myth because everything can change. And we've seen that, right? You've seen that really in 2020. The economies are down, and it's not 1 or 2 countries, by the way. It's the world. It's the world. The pandemic has seen a rise in mental health issues, and those issues were there before, but when you take away all the externals, then what you're left with is really intense, because now there's nothing to hide behind. So the karma of 2020 was to get people to explore the quality of their foundations, and to get, especially if they're intelligent like you all are, to set your foundations on something which is stronger than the material energy, and that's the spiritual energy. Okay, so if you set these qualities on autopilot, then no matter what life brings to you, you will be in the strongest position to deal with it. You see, this is the real solution. Most people, and it's unfortunate, because we've never really thought about it. What most people do is we try to make all the external things stable. Okay, but if your presidents and if your prime ministers can't do it, good luck. How are you going to do it? They can't control the economy. True, right? If they could control the economy, this wouldn't happen. This virus, be clear about this. The virus is microscopic. You can't even see it. So something which is so tiny that you can't see has affected the entire global community, the world economy. It has forced practically everyone into self-isolation. Wow. So if you bring the habits that you know are going to make the difference in your life, set up a system that causes those habits to move on autopilot. And then you become like a good business. A good business, because of the way the system works, they make money every day. Recession, no recession, makes no matter, baby. They're making money, right? That's how your life should be. That's how our life should be. And what you're doing with those systems is you're drawing spiritual strength on a regular basis. Okay? What happens in the devotee's life, the progress is not exactly linear. If people set up good systems in their life, what happens is your progress becomes exponential because it builds upon itself. Because the more you have, the more you're given. I was pulling together some reflections on a seminar I'm going to give at some point in the future. So I couldn't sleep a few days. I mean, I could sleep, but I was kind of, my mind was buzzing. So as I was meditating, I was reflecting on three things. So there's different systems in terms of having deep understanding or realization. So I was explaining that the first level, you need foundational knowledge, right? So foundational knowledge refers to certain frameworks in the Shastra. Example, three modes of material nature, the process of Shraddha Prema, the stages. Anyway, there's so many different foundational frameworks in the Shastra. So when you have that first foundational knowledge, the second stage is what we call, is what I termed symptomatic knowledge. So you have the frameworks, but then you understand the symptoms of each of those frameworks. So for example, I know that the symptoms of the mode of goodness are illumination, cleanliness, etc., etc. I know the symptoms of the mode of passion are greed, lust, etc. I know the symptoms of the mode of ignorance are laziness, delusion, etc. So the first level is you know the framework. The second is you know the symptoms of each of those frameworks. Now, something amazing happens. When you understand these two levels of knowledge, then when you read the Shastra, you can see a lot more. Because you will read something. Let me see if I'll read this to you, because I wanted to try and share this to give you a really tangible example. So this is the Bhagavad Gita. If I remember correctly, this is chapter 14. I think it's text number 27. Let me see if it's that particular text. Because there's something, I know how to find it. I know how to find it. So let's look at it like this. So, I'm going to read you something, and you're going to decode it for me. So listen to this. This is chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 22 to 25. Now, listen to this, and then I'm going to ask you to decode it. I'll just read you the first part of this chapter, of this verse. Chapter 14, text number 22 to 25. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion. Okay, now you're going to decode this for me. In terms of the modes of material nature, it said he who does not hate illumination. Illumination is what mode? The mode of?
Goodness.
Goodness. Okay. Attachment, which is the mode of?
Passion.
Passion. And delusion, which is the mode of? Ignorance. You see the point? If you carefully study the Shastra, you'll see Krishna sometimes speaks thematically. But again, if you know the frameworks, modes of material nature, you know the symptoms of each mode, then when you read something like that, you say, oh, I get it, I get what he's saying. He's talking about the modes of material nature. He's using what we call exemplars. Illumination, as you said, goodness. Attachment, passion. Delusion, ignorance. You can start to have deep insight, and you can start to unpack so many different things in the Shastra. You see? So to be honest, there's a whole other universe in Krishna consciousness, which is not so apparent. It's not so apparent, but it's there. It's there. Anyway, I don't want to take us off because I'm also conscious of time. But I want to leave you with this consideration. The number one thing I want to leave you with is that we want to move in life in a certain direction. We want to arrange our lives. I love this idea of igniting the flame. You want to not just ignite the flame, you want to keep it going. You want to keep that flame burning, baby. Okay? So you need constant fuel. But the fuel should not be whenever you remember to do something. Okay? The idea is you have a goal, then you set up a system that keeps you moving towards that goal, and you're doing it more on the energy of the environment, and then but with willpower as well. So you use your willpower to set up the environment. To set up the environment, you have to use your willpower and your intelligence. How do I create the situation that supports me in moving to that goal? Okay, so use your willpower and intelligence to create systems, and you engage with that system on a continuous basis, because what that does is you're building up spiritual strength, which makes your spiritual life and your spiritual strength progress like this. It becomes exponentially strong. And that strength is your greatest way of future-proofing your life. Okay? You set up a system that transforms you, right? And that is what Prabhupada did in the morning program. That's what Prabhupada did in the book distribution. That's what Prabhupada did in the Sankirtan movement. They are systems. Just like you have a business which is systemic, your life and your habits should be empowered by systems, okay? And if you do that, you put your success on autopilot. I remember when I was studying for my, I can't remember if it was A-levels. It was, so, I'll be honest, I clocked it. My A-levels are like your college exams. It was so, I did so well, and it didn't require so much, like pushing yourself, because what I did is I had systems. I connected with other people who wanted to study. So Prabhupada talks about this in ISKCON. He says a twig, by itself, it can be broken easily. Many twigs, you can't break any of them, okay? So in 2021, I encourage you, autopilot your success. Ignite the fire and keep fueling that flame to build on your own success. Because when you do that, the environment starts to go inside you. And then what happens is you use your intelligence and your willpower as a value add, because you're automatically doing the right things anyway. That's your foundation. That becomes your foundation. Now your willpower and your intelligence can be used to take it to a whole other level. A whole other level. And we need that in ISKCON. We need that in the world. We need people who are powerful, insightful, who are really all guns blazing. And this is how it can be done. Okay, I'm sorry I've gone over time, but you know me. So let's stop there. And I've got time if anyone else has time for Q&A. If not, if you need to go, I completely understand.
Yes, so that was really amazing. Thank you so much. We're just going to do about 10 to 15 minutes of questions. So if you have to leave, feel free to. So we'll start off. So one of the questions are, when maneuvering the inner world, a lot of undesirables can manifest that we were previously unaware of. How do we manage this and deal with these undesirable principles that may arise as we navigate our inner world?
Fantastic. First of all, it's a very good question. So thank you for that question. What happens is this, I've been meditating on this a lot over the last year. There's always a ratio. You have undesirables coming up within the heart or even within our life space, okay? The experience we have of anything negative is also always in contrast or in relation to other things. You never experience a negative in isolation. So everything has a context, okay? So let's give an example. Let's say that you have a devotee who is going through a period of really bad health. I know someone like that. And to be honest, this person, I mean, they're such good-hearted people. They're really nice people. They're one of my favorite people on the planet. It's very sincere. This lady, so it's a married couple, but the lady's been going through difficulties for a long time, right? Because of, a particular situation I won't get into. So what I did recently, I reached out to some of my God family and I said, this person's been, I know someone, they've been going through a lot of difficulty for a long time. They really need people to, especially like motherly energy, supportive energy. And one of my senior God sisters, she reached out to me and said, okay, tell me more about this person. I'll be interested in speaking to them. So I recently connected them. I got a message. I'll read you the message, because the lady who's been going through challenges, she sent me this message last night and I read it this morning and I forwarded it to someone else. So what she wrote is, she said, Hare Krishna Prabhu, sorry to message you late, but I just spoke with the lady who I put her in touch with, and wow, it was wonderful speaking to her. She is so caring and loving. I'm very grateful, that you've connected us, and I look forward to having more of her association. So why am I saying this? So you have, I mean, if I told you what they've been through, it's intense. It's really intense, and it's been for years. It's not one-off. It's not one or two things. So there's the challenges that they've had, but now what's coming into her life more is support. So what that's going to do is it's going to change the very nature of how she experiences the challenges, right? So think of it like a sabji. Some people in ISKCON, they're really good cooks, okay? I'm not learning, okay, but you have good cooks in ISKCON. They may cook something, and you know what? They may put too much salt in it. But because they're such good cooks, they know how to pull another ingredient in that will offset the fact that it's got too much salt. You understand what I mean? Or they may just make a greater quantity, so, whatever it is, they can offset it. So the challenges we have in our lives, they're actually offset by the degree of support and positivity. It's the context. That's what changes the nature of the experience. So if you go through some difficulty, but you have loads of loving support around you, the support increases the positivity and it makes the difficulty small by contrast. There's a secret that they use to make money in business. So in men's clothing stores, this is for the guys, right? But actually this applies to women as well, because they do this in your clothing stores as well. When you go into a clothing store, one of the things that they often do, if they're really expert, the first few items that you see are the most expensive, okay? And it's deliberate. They put, so if I go into a men's clothing store, they make, let's say it's for buying suits. The first few suits I'll see are the really expensive ones, okay? There's a reason for that. So I look at the first few suits, £2,000, £1,000, whatever it is. As I go further into the store, I will see other suits in the store which are cheaper, okay? So I saw the first few £1,000, £2,000, but later on I'll see ones which are 500, 400, etc. It's done on purpose because they've done studies. And in the studies, they found that your perception is based upon contrast, okay? So if I see the first few suits and they cost £1,000 or £2,000, then when I go further into the store and I see suits which are 500 or 600 pounds, I will think that's reasonable, right? Why? Because 500 or 600 pounds is reasonable in contrast with 1,000 or 2,000, okay? If the first few suits I saw were cheap and then I saw 500, I would think 500, that's really expensive. I would only buy the cheapest suits. So your judgment on something is in contrast to something else. It's not done independently. It's always contextual, okay? So to your question about the things coming up, it's actually not a problem if you also have put the necessary elements in place of positive engagement in spiritual life. If you feel excited about your friends, if you feel excited about kirtan, if you feel excited about what you've been reading and the classes you've been listening to, then when these anatas come up in the heart, you feel, oh yeah, it's not good, but I can get through it, because there's so much, it's the negative in the context of so many positive things. It becomes difficult if all it is negative, and there's no, if that's the only flavor of your sabji, it's hard to digest. You understand the point? So what I would say to that is make sure that you have that balance in life. You see, this is what it means. Spiritual life is meant to be done in context. So you're meant to have those positive engagements so that when the anatas come up, it's real, we've got to deal with it, but you have such a positive context that this becomes easy to deal with. Does that answer the question?
Great. So the next question is, when you spoke about Krishna sending various devotees or signs to tell you to serve your spiritual master, how do you deal with accepting a sign from Krishna despite others telling you the opposite? How can we stay open to these messages he is sending? Example, many devotees may spontaneously suggest for you to do something, but other devotees or family friends may suggest the opposite. What can we do in that situation?
And this, thank you for that question. And this is why, see, there's Krishna, it's not possible to reach higher stages of Krishna consciousness unless you actually want to. Okay? Because Krishna, he really loves you, but he's not going to take away your free will. And what you want is shown by what you do. People can talk, anyone can say something, but what they do actually indicates what they really want. Prabhupada brings this out. He says it's in the purport to Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, God helps those who help themselves. And he says in another place, he says, man proposes, God disposes. So sometimes we say, oh, why isn't Krishna helping me? It's like he's willing to help you, but you don't want the help. And say, oh, but I do want the help. No, you don't. You don't. You spend all your time doing something else. You don't want the help. You spend all your time doing other things other than Krishna. And then it's like, well, Krishna, why didn't you help me? It's like, well, because you don't want the help. If you wanted the help, you'd go to him and say, dude, I want the help. You knock on the door, Krishna, I want some help, please help me. So it's actually shown by our lifestyle. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because, and this is a bit of a journey, I'll be honest, if you do these things on autopilot properly, like the reading and hearing, you'll have better discrimination. So when people tell you stuff, you won't be easily fooled. Because and this is what I said before, this subtle science, anyone can talk. It's an unfortunate thing about Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is full of people who pretend that they know more than they actually do. It's unfortunate. But you see, but Krishna, the way he sees it, it's like, but you had an opportunity to read my books and to listen to my classes. So when people say that, you have an ability to evaluate what's being said. That's one thing. The second thing is that when you're see, this is another important step. And this is from First Canto Bhagavatam, chapter 19, text number 12 in the purple. Prabhupada says there that every major decision should be confirmed by some authority. So bear in mind, when I gave the example of my Guru Maharaj, I got these devotees telling me you should spend time with him, but then I called him up. So it wasn't just, I think this, I'm just going to do that. I got the message. I thought it seems like devotees are telling me this, and I then confirmed it with my authority, which is my guru. You see how it works. So this is another crucial part. So you keep an eye out for messages from Krishna, and sometimes he won't give a message, by the way. Sometimes there's more than one way to do it. Sometimes it's like you can choose, right? Do you go to this class or that class? They're all good classes. So it's not like, Krishna's going to say, go to his class, don't listen to him. It's not necessarily like that. Sometimes like, yeah, you can do any of these things. They're all good. They're all Krishna conscious, okay? But especially for major decisions, that's what Prabhupada says, major decisions, you can look for signs. And as I said before, you have to be humble and sincere. If you're not humble and sincere, Krishna won't force you. It's like, because he's to be honest, he's soft-hearted. You should know that about Krishna. He doesn't like being rejected, by the way. So if people are like, I don't want to listen to Krishna, I don't listen to Krishna, he's like, I feel hurt. I still love you, but okay. You don't want to hear my voice, okay. So he's soft-hearted. I remember hearing this point before, that when devotees get kind of difficulties, it's not Krishna. He's so soft-hearted, he can't punish his devotees. So what happens is Maya has to do that on his behalf, because he's just like, I can't do it. I know that they don't want to talk to me, or they're ignoring me, but I can't make them suffer. I can't do it. He's very soft-hearted. You should know that about him. He's very soft-hearted. So first of all, if the reading is there, you have the ability to discriminate. That's one factor. Second, even when you think that signs are coming, you check in with some authority. You see, that's what makes the matter perfect. So you're not just blindly, and that's what protects us from just it being the mind, right? That's what protects us, because when you think something is coming from Krishna through the devotees, it still has to be in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. It can't be outside of that. It's not Krishna told you to go and have a hamburger at McDonald's. It's not that kind of, like that. It has to be within Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So you may think you may think that Krishna's, different devotees are saying something, and then you check in with authorities. Okay, and as you become more learned, you have more ability to weigh things up, because there's a science to that, right? There's a science to it. Again, we don't have time to get into it now, but there's many different things which are said in Shastra, and if you know the principles of scripture, which is something we develop over time, then you can see of all these 5 different options in the scriptures, which one would be the most suitable for my current situation. And the idea is, hopefully when we have an immature association, they can help us to see, yeah, the Shastra gives all these different 5 options. Well, of these different 5 options, in the situation that you are in, the best option is to do this. When I was meditating that night that I couldn't fall asleep, what came to mind was that the scripture, it ultimately is in the form of a pyramid. And we know this intuitively. We all know this. I'll explain what I mean. It's not that all the teachings in the scripture are equally important. You see, there's a hierarchy. So something like Varnashram is not as important as chanting the holy name. You see the point? That's more important. Chanting the holy name is most important. So there's a hierarchy. So the instructions are all there, but they are ranked differently. However, what happens in our teachings is, of all the different teachings, you have to see which one is most relevant for me. And we know this. When you're speaking to people who are new to Krishna consciousness, it's the best thing to tell them immediately from day one about all the 4 principles. Yes or no? No. Prabhupada didn't do that. What's emphasized for someone who's new? You tell them to do what? Someone can unmute. What do? You tell them to?
Dance and be happy.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So we all know this intuitively. It's not that chanting or the regulative principles are the only teachings in our scripture. There's loads of teachings in our scripture. But of all of these teachings, the question becomes, what's relevant for this person? Which of all these teachings, what's going to be the one that's aligned to this person's situation that's going to help them to take the next step forward, right? For someone else who's been chanting for a long time, then you're going to talk about, okay, now it's time to think about finding a spiritual master and taking initiation. You see? Because for them, they're at a different stage, a different instruction is more relevant. And this is shown in I was thinking, where do we see this example? You see this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a conversation between Lord Chaitanya and I believe it's Ramananda Roy. And so they're discussing different things and Lord Chaitanya says, go deeper, right? And then they discuss something, he says, go deeper. They discuss something else, he says, go deeper, because it's a hierarchy, you see? So there is the absolute hierarchy, and then there is the personal hierarchy. The absolute hierarchy is how the scripture ranks in terms of different teachings. Then there's the personal hierarchy, meaning for this person on the journey, what do I emphasize for him or her? Because if you emphasize the wrong person, you disturb their spiritual life. Someone's coming to the university programs and all you're talking about is how they have to give up everything. No, then they don't come back to your program, right? And they could have become a devotee, but it was the wrong emphasis because that's not what you emphasize for this person at this stage. You see, that's how it works. Anyway, those are some reflections.
Great. Thank you so much, Bhuta Bhavana. That was such an amazing and inspirational and practical session as always. Yeah, a round of applause, silent.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll link some of Bhuta Bhavana's social media handles in the chat if you want to look into.
Can I quickly do a plug for my Guru Maharaj's books? Is that okay?
For sure.
Okay, let me just quickly show you this, because what I've been doing, I'm going to quickly move through the slides to the particular slide I want to show you. So we were recently sending out some posters because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's books are now available on Amazon. So you can see some different posters, and this is for the leadership series. There's a book on surrender, which is all about how we can progress in spiritual life. Then there is some books on Spiritual Warrior 2 is on relationships. Spiritual Warrior 3 is a commentary on modern society. Spiritual Warrior 4 and 5 are about the mind, and how to harness the mind for spiritual progress. And there's also a BT Swami Vault on YouTube, which has many of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's classes. He's on Instagram as Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and there's also a Facebook page, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Quotes. And so anyway, the main thing is that the books are available on Amazon. So on print on demand, so you can get any of the paperbacks, any of the Kindle books as well. All of the books are on Kindle, and most of them are on paperback, except there's 5 titles which we're working on to get them available as paperback as well. So I just wanted to plug that. Sorry, I just wanted to. And do follow me on Instagram. I'm going to start something on Instagram next Sunday, which I think you guys will really like, by the way. But keep an eye on my Instagram for some announcements. We'll start something quite interesting next Sunday.